Hello everyone and welcome to another video. So I've got a little bit of international travel coming up, so I wanted to take a moment and have a quick discussion about how I plan on taking everything you see here, and in fact a little bit more, and taking this folding bike and breaking it down so that it fits into a standard checked luggage bag. So the plan is to get all of this into that bag so I can just bring it down to the airline, check it in, send it to my destination. When I get there, unpack it and hopefully be able to ride in a foreign country easily using my own bike. So that's the game plan. So if that sounds like fun, why don't we go ahead and get started with how I plan on disassembling some of these components and getting it to fit into that luggage. All right, so the first thing to do is let's remove a lot of these accessories that can come off pretty easily. So for example, the basket, let's take the basket off, and then we're gonna have to take off things like my cell phone holder. And then let's take off this front light. Okay. Then we can take off this rear light. That pops off pretty easily. And then we can take off the saddlebag here. Okay. And then this rear fender also comes off pretty quickly. There we go. Okay, and now let's get this front fender off. That's going to take a little bit more tooling. Let me go grab a crescent wrench and a screwdriver. And one thing I am being very careful of is any tool that I'm using for the disassembly process, I am putting in a separate location so that I will be able to pack it so I can use it for the reassembly process later. Okay, and then one other thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to deflate the tires. So that's for two reasons. So one, it's going to make them easier to pack, and two, also when this thing is up at altitude on the aircraft with low pressure, I hope it won't pop. So I'm going to deflate the tires, both front and rear. All right, so now let's get this brake unlatched. There we go. So we get the front brake unlatched. Let's unlatch the rear brake also, so now those are open. And now we can think about getting the actual tires off. So to do that, we just got to pull these little plastic caps off, these silly little caps to expose these nuts. So those, I believe, are 15 millimeters. So let's just go and grab a 15 millimeter wrench. Okay, there we are. Got the front wheel off. Let's now get the rear off, same way. Rear is just gonna take a little bit more work because we got the derailleur to deal with, but that should hopefully not be too much of an issue. And also this rear one has this little derailleur guard here, so I'm gonna have to try to get this guy off. Oh, there we go, popped off. Okay, and then rear wheel is out. Okay, so we got both the wheels off. And now let's actually take off this rear derailleur. So the derailleur hanger here will just unscrew from the main frame, which is the 5 millimeter Allen. Okay, and that's gonna allow us to pull this off because we're gonna see later when I shove this in the suitcase, this actually will help it fit a lot cleaner. Okay, there we are. Okay, derailleur is off like that, and actually we can take this chain off the main sprocket as well. And then basically, I'm actually going to leave it like this and just be careful of how I place it in the suitcase. So, all right, derailleur is off. Excellent. All right, so now let's get the crank arms off. So in here, there's a 14 millimeter nut that we're gonna have to remove first. So, and I always wear gloves on this because this always makes me super nervous when you've got the sprocket here and you're trying to loosen this. And as you can see, this thing is kind of awkward. So, let me just break this thing loose and hopefully not skin my knuckles doing this. There we go. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this nut out. Okay. There we go, nut is off. And now, let's get our crank puller tool. I guess I'll assume you know how these things work, so I'm going to back out the inner core out as much as I can. Okay. Then we're going to screw this into the threads on the crank arm right here, as much as it'll go. Okay. All right, so I think we've got a couple threads on there. Now, let's go ahead and grab 15 millimeter, and we need a little bit of a deeper throat 15 millimeter socket so it can fit over this part of the inner core of the crank arm puller. So now, let's turn this to tighten, and we're going to tighten the inner core of the crank arm puller, and that should hopefully press off the crank arm. Again, this always takes a little bit of effort for the first bit. Okay, there we go. There we go. Push, push, push there. Perfect. And there we go. The whole crank arm pops off. Then we can take out our crank arm removal tool and make sure we save this and put this in the suitcase so that we can do this again. And we'll do the same for the opposite side, and then we'll have pretty much both the crank arms off. All right, so we're getting there. So let's go ahead and think about, let's lower this handlebar as much as possible, like that. There we go. In fact, what we could also even do maybe is just like, let's break it down so that guy can come down like that. Let's tidy up the brakes. Let's go ahead and clip this back in on the front brake, okay? And let's clip in the rear brake as well. Just reattach them. Okay. Okay, and then we can also take off the seat post. So this guy luckily comes completely out. There we go, disassembled. Okay, and now let's think about breaking the two halves apart now. Okay, so let me see. I've changed the camera angle to show you a better view of what's going on next. So the idea with this folding bike is normally it can come apart pretty easily in the sense that this will just break like this, right? So the two halves of the bike will fold up. But it turns out that actually is not enough. I need to be able to completely separate this rear half from the front half to get us enough room inside the suitcase. So we need to take out this pin right here, which is the pivot point. So to do that, what we're gonna have to do is grab ourselves a 5 millimeter Allen and take off this bolt on the top, okay? There is also the equivalent bolt on the bottom of this. So let's take that out as well, okay? And then what we're gonna have to do is this pin is actually pretty darn tight in here. So what we're gonna have to do is get something to push the pin out while we are simultaneously trying to wiggle the two sides to get this pin to come out. So let me see if I can make that a little bit more clear in just a second. Okay, so I got these two out. Now this pin is just a friction fit inside this sleeve, but that friction is ridiculous. So we need to get something to push up here. So let me go ahead and grab some components. All right, so the way to get this pin out is I'm gonna take one of those bolts and I'm gonna screw it back in a little bit down to the bottom part, okay? So there's now gonna be about a 1/4 inch gap between the head of the bolt and the flange here. So what that's gonna allow me to do is I'm gonna be able to tap on it very gently with a little hammer from the bottom while I'm simultaneously kind of rotating this rear half, and hopefully the combination of the tapping and the rotating will give it enough movement to be able to tap this sleeve, this pin out of the sleeve. So I'm gonna do that right now. I'm just gonna rotate, and just tap, 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 tap. There you go, and as you can see, it's starting to come out, okay? Now at this point, I've run out of stroke with this bolt down below because, let me see if I can take this bolt out and I can show you, right? This bolt is not super duper deep, right? It's not very deep. So instead, what I've also got in my little kit is, you know, here's the original short bolt. I've got a longer bolt with the same thread. So now let me just replace it with this longer bolt. Okay. Get a couple of threads inside that bottom of that pin. Okay. And now let's just go ahead and continue this process now that I've got a little bit more space between the bolt and the flange. So again, I'm just going to keep wiggling and tapping gently. I'm going to be careful of these brake and derailleur cables. And then look at that. Look at that. There we go. A little bit more maybe. There we go. Okay, now I've run out of stroke on this bolt as well from the bottom, but now I can go ahead and take out the bolt. I'll unscrew it from the bottom. Okay, and I can kind of actually just switch, and I'm going to screw it into the top. And now I'm going to hope that I can kind of just pull, and there we go. See, if I pull and wiggle, look at that. The thing just comes straight out. Okay, great. So we got the pin out. Now this back half will just, oh, look at that. It's coming off, right? There we go, right? There we go. Now the back half is completely separated from the front half, except for the brake and shifter cable. So we're going to leave those there. But now this is going to allow me to go ahead and fit everything inside the suitcase much more nicely. So let's take a look at that next. Oh, and sorry, just for completeness, maybe what I do want to show is that this pin is not symmetrical, so we just got to be careful. So the part with the grooves, you can see that is the top and the smooth is the bottom. So it's got to go back in like this. Okay, so just remember that when we do the reassembly. Okay, so one thing we should also probably do is break this basket down. So this basket is actually quite nice. All you got to do is get your little 4mm Allen and unscrew on either side, and really this should just come right apart. It's really simple. So let me just get this side off. Okay, there we go. That's one side. And then, oh, actually I already did the other side. So yeah, the handlebar comes off, or the little basket handle, and then these little parts on the inside will just pop right out. These are what keep the basket kind of rigid, and then this whole thing just kind of folds flat. And now I can shove everything inside of it, and now we have a much more compact unit that will fit in the suitcase a lot better. Okay, so now we've got everything laid out. So here's the somewhat daunting task. We got to get the bike, the wheels, all this stuff, right? Including helmets and shoes and stuff. I'm going to bring actually a couple extra helmets as well for the kids. But all of this has got to fit inside that checked bag. So let's figure that out. Maybe before we do this, since we have everything laid out, I will point out some of the tools that we needed for this. So we needed a Phillips screwdriver, a crescent wrench, a deep neck 15mm socket, 14mm socket wrench, and then a crank puller tool, and then this little mini hammer. And then of course we had some small little bits and bobs like some of the bolts that help us push out that sleeve. But really it's not too bad. I will also mention that yes, I did use a bike multi-tool to get some of these components out as well. So you do need things like some 4 and 5mm Allens as well. That's in the bike multi-tool that's inside that saddlebag, as well as I've got a bike pump and things like that you're always going to need the bike pump to pump the wheels back up when we get to our location. So couple of items. So let's try to see if we can pack all of this stuff inside the suitcase now. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take the bike frame and I'm going to fold it as close to the way it typically folds and then just lay it inside. So this is the main part that obviously takes up the most room. But if we get this in here sort of intelligently, I've discovered it fits quite nicely. Now we're just going to have to be a little bit careful with a derailleur and all of those parts. And if we just carefully lay this all inside, everything fits somewhat nicely. Okay, and this is why you can see where it's nice that you're able to break this apart a little bit, because now this fits a lot better. It doesn't take up quite as much room. Okay, let's grab some more parts. All right, next let's get some of these longer parts like the seat post. That can usually nestle right here in the corner. There we go. And some of these things like these fenders that are kind of long, a little bit ungainly, can fit in there. Okay, great. And then some of the crank arms, you can also sort of nestle them in places. It's really nice that the crank arms come off because, man, I've actually been able to fit this in without taking the crank arms off, but these pedals stick up in super awkward locations, so I do like it better if we can take these off. This makes it fit a lot more nicely and cleanly. Okay, and now let's see, maybe now the wheels. The wheels are definitely one of the other big problems, but in this fashion, I've discovered that you can basically fit both wheels kind of, and sometimes you might even have to I've had to be very creative with how these things go. Yeah, because I don't think that's quite gonna make it. See, but I think this will basically make it for the most part. See if you close, see, look at that, no problem, right? It's closing, okay, that's good. So now it's a matter of packing in all the other random stuff in the space we've got remaining. All right, so now let's keep packing in stuff like our tools here will probably fit in this little corner. Yeah, here I see some empty space here. We can get some of the shoes in. In fact, I'm gonna put things like bike gloves inside the shoes to try to maximize as much space as possible. Where else can I put some shoes? Oh, there's some open space over here. Yep, bike shoe will fit there. Cable lock, water bottle. Oh boy, this one's gonna be tough. Okay, there we go. Yep, saddle bag. Yeah, hopefully that will fit there. Okay, now bike basket. I think I can get this guy crammed inside here. Hopefully. Ooh, boy, this is gonna be a little tough. Yikes, this one might be tough. Okay, let's see if we can get this and a helmet in some place. And actually, you know, it's funny, I'll mention that I'm bringing some of my older junkier helmets because I imagine they're gonna get a little bit banged up. So I'm trying to be cautious of that fact. Okay, well, let's try the basket over here maybe. Let's just do another quick fit check. Ooh, this is pretty close. So that's, yep, I think we're getting there. It's just going to take a little bit of creative packing for these last items. Okay, looks like, oh, we can probably get a kid helmet there. Let me try this one. Okay. There. Oh boy, let's try this. Another quick, super fast check. Oh boy, that's really close. Okay, let me rejigger some of this and we'll see if we can get this to fit. Okay, it took a little bit of finagling, but here it is. Everything is fitting. And now let's just check, and I'll show you that actually, watch this. I actually can even close the luggage with all that junk inside. Look at that. It's all set. There we go. Bike, 3 helmets, a lot of other junk, all inside this suitcase. So we should also just go ahead and weigh this and make sure this doesn't exceed the 50-pound limit. So let's do that. Let's weigh it and measure it to make sure we're still in compliance. Okay, so one thing I want to show is that, all right, so when initially I got the bike inside, I had to open up and expand you can kind of see right here, this luggage has the ability to expand, you know, about 2 inches if you need the extra space. But I'm curious now if I actually can get it closed into the tighter configuration now that everything's in there. So I think if I just kind of squeeze this a little bit closed and start zipping this shut, I wonder if I can actually get this guy. Oh, look at this. This is looking very promising. All right. Okay. Look at this. It's working. Everything is closing up nicely. Well, maybe not nicely, but at least it's closing. Look at this. Okay, almost all the way around. See if we can kind of... Almost. Haha! Look at that! It even fit into the small configuration. So let's go ahead and measure this now. So dimension-wise, this is about 12 inches across, maybe 13 if we want to be generous. 13 by, let me see, about 21, 13 and 21, and 13, 21, and 28. 13, 21, and 28. So I can't do that math in my head. Let me just double check that. So 13 plus 21 plus, what did I say, 28? Is 62. Ah, that's perfect. That is exactly the airline's limit. So the length plus width plus height should not exceed 62 inches. So great, we are exactly in compliance with that. Now let's go ahead and get the weight of this guy. So hit the calibrate button. Okay, so that says 0 on the scale. Let's drop this guy on and pop it off. Look at that, 49.4 pounds. So this is exactly perfect. So this is exactly in compliance with a checked bag. So there you go. Proof of feasibility, got the whole bike, all the helmets, all the equipment inside a checked bag, inside the limits. So now let's head down to the airport and drop this on the plane, and then we will ship it to our destination. So as you can see, transporting this as a standard suitcase is way easier than taking a full-size bike bag. It simply rolls like an, albeit somewhat heavy bag. And speaking of heavy, it seems like my scale at home is a little conservative, and the airline scale shows that I'm actually a little bit over the 50-pound weight limit, but luckily they were nice and didn't charge me any extra fees. And they just checked my bag directly to my final destination, and here you can see it rolling off the line where I can just pick it up. All right, so it finally made it here. We're at our destination in the foreign country. It's pretty awesome here. Check it out. There's a pool over there. There's a little guest house. There's the main house back there, so not too shabby. But now, getting back to the subject at hand, we got to unpack this thing and put the bike back together. And unpacking and reassembly is pretty much the opposite of what we showed earlier, and because I was careful and packed all the tools and components needed for this process, it really only takes me around 15 minutes to reassemble the bike, and we're ready to go. All right, so here we are. The bike is out of the luggage, and we are touring around the south of France with it. This is beautiful. So totally doable, right? You can get this folding bike out and it lets you go around, check things out that you probably wouldn't be able to if you're just on foot. I mean, yeah, I'll agree. This is not, I'm not in the Tour de France by any means, but this is pretty cool. All right, so there you have it. We are back at home. So this made it out there and back. Now, I'm not gonna say it made it out there and back unscathed. I don't know if you can see this easily, but the wheel, the axle basically punched through the suitcase here. So what I'm gonna have to do is, I think there was too much of a stress concentration right here. So I'm gonna probably print a 3D print a little cap that's gonna go over this. And in fact, I can show you this a little bit more closely so you can see. But as you can see, right, it's punched through the entire suitcase. So I'll just go ahead and print a little cap to distribute that stress a little bit better, and this should work fine. In fact, this was the third time that I've shipped this bike in a checked bag, and I think 3 is not too bad for one suitcase. This thing's taken a bunch of a beating, but otherwise, as you can see, this worked out surprisingly well. No extra baggage fees. You're able to just ship it back and forth, roll it around like a normal suitcase, and that gets you a bike wherever you need to go. So worked out great. So that being said, I think this is probably a great spot to leave it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if so, I also hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. If you scroll a little ways down and click on that button, it really does help me continue making these videos. And I hope to have more videos on similar subjects in the future, and these new videos come out every Monday, so I hope I'll be able to catch you at a future discussion and we can all learn something new together. So until then, I think I'll sign off. Talk to you later. Bye.